ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯊꯧꯕ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯑꯩ ꯏꯁꯥꯃꯛ ꯖꯤꯅꯤꯚꯥꯗ ꯌꯨꯅꯥꯏꯇꯦꯗ ꯅꯦꯁꯟꯁꯀꯤ ꯍ꯭ꯌꯨꯃꯟ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯀꯥꯎꯟꯁꯤꯜꯗ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯦꯜ ꯄꯤꯔꯤꯌꯣꯗꯤꯛ ꯔꯤꯚ꯭ꯌꯨ ꯃꯔꯤꯔꯛ ꯁꯨꯕ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯔꯤꯚ꯭ꯌꯨ ꯇꯧꯕꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯄꯥꯔꯇꯤꯁꯤꯄꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯖꯔꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯇꯣꯝ ꯇꯤꯚꯤꯅ ꯃꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯂꯥꯏꯚ ꯇꯦꯂꯤꯀꯥꯁ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯅꯤꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯄꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯤꯡꯉꯥꯏ ꯂꯩꯇꯅ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯄ ꯐꯣꯡꯗꯣꯛꯆꯔꯤ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯦꯜ ꯄꯤꯔꯤꯌꯣꯗꯤꯛ ꯔꯤꯚ꯭ꯌू ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯆꯍꯤ ꯃꯔꯤ ꯃꯈꯥꯏ ꯈꯨꯗꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯕꯥꯛ ꯑꯃꯃꯝꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯍ꯭ꯌꯨꯃꯟ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯁꯤꯆꯨꯋꯦꯁꯟꯁꯦ ꯑꯇꯣꯞꯄ ꯃꯥꯂꯦꯝꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯕꯥꯛ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯔꯤꯚ꯭ꯌू ꯇꯧꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯄꯨꯝꯅꯃꯛ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯚ꯭ꯌू ꯃꯔꯤꯔꯛ ꯁꯨꯕ ꯇꯧꯕꯁꯤꯗ ꯀꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯨ ꯄꯨꯟꯅ ꯌꯦꯡꯃꯤꯟꯅꯁꯤ ꯑꯊꯧꯕ ꯀꯩ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯤꯕ ꯂꯩꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ
ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯐꯥꯎꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯐꯪꯖꯕ ꯀꯟꯐꯔꯃꯦꯁꯟꯗ ꯇꯣꯞ ꯇꯤꯚꯤꯅ ꯂꯥꯏꯚ ꯁ꯭ꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯝ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯒꯅꯤꯅ ꯇꯥꯛꯄꯤꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯑꯇꯣꯞꯄ ꯇꯤꯚꯤ ꯆꯦꯅꯦꯜ ꯏꯚꯟ ISTVꯁꯨ ꯇꯧꯒꯅꯤꯅ ꯄꯥꯎ ꯂꯥꯛꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯇꯣꯞꯄ ꯇꯤꯚꯤ ꯆꯦꯅꯦꯜꯁꯤꯡꯅꯁꯨ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯒꯤ ꯃꯤꯌꯥꯝꯗ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯆꯠꯊꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯁꯦꯁꯟ ꯑꯁꯤꯗ ꯀꯝꯗꯧꯅ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯒꯚꯔꯟꯃꯦꯟꯠꯅ ꯍ꯭ꯌꯨꯃꯟ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯇꯦꯛ ꯇꯧꯅꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯧꯈꯠꯂꯤꯕ ꯊꯕꯛ ꯊꯧꯔꯝꯁꯤꯡ ꯃꯤꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯄꯦꯟꯗꯕꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯨ ꯄꯨꯟꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯔꯤꯚ꯭ꯌू ꯇꯧꯃꯤꯟꯅꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯔꯤꯀꯃꯦꯟꯗꯦꯁꯟꯁ ꯂꯥꯛꯀꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯑꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔ ꯃꯇꯝ ꯁꯥꯡꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯑꯥꯔꯝ ꯀꯟꯐ꯭ꯂꯤꯛꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯚꯤꯛꯇꯤꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒ ꯀꯨꯏꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯛꯄꯒꯤ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯆꯩꯐꯨ ꯀꯌꯥ ꯑꯃ ꯐꯪꯉꯒ ꯂꯥꯛꯈ꯭ꯔꯕ ꯈꯨꯟꯅꯥꯏ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯑꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯅꯥꯟꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯉꯝꯅꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯕꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥꯕꯨ ꯀꯟꯚꯤꯟꯁ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯕꯦꯇꯔ ꯄ꯭ꯂꯦꯁ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯍꯟꯅꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯕꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯏꯀꯩꯗꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯨꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯤꯚꯤꯜ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤ ꯀꯣꯑꯣꯂꯤꯖꯟ ꯐꯣꯔ ꯍ꯭ꯌꯨꯃꯟ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯁꯤꯚꯤꯜ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤ ꯑꯣꯔꯒꯅꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯄꯨꯟꯁꯤꯜꯂꯒ ꯁꯦꯝꯈꯤꯕ ꯄ꯭ꯂꯦꯠꯐꯣꯝ ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯈꯨꯠꯊꯥꯡꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯇꯥꯃꯣ ꯕꯕꯂꯨ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯍꯥꯛꯅ ꯔꯤꯄ꯭ꯔꯖꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯃꯐꯝ ꯑꯁꯤꯗ ꯁꯦꯁꯟ ꯌꯥꯎꯕ ꯂꯥꯛꯆꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯣꯔꯦꯟ ꯁꯦꯁꯟ ꯂꯣꯏꯔꯒ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗ ꯑꯣꯚꯔꯑꯣꯜ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠꯁꯨ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯊꯝꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯖꯒꯅꯤ
ꯁꯦꯁꯟ ꯍꯧꯗ꯭ꯔꯤꯉꯩꯗ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯝꯇꯪ ꯊꯝꯖꯍꯧꯅꯤꯡꯕ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯊꯣꯛꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯤꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯔꯤꯇꯟ ꯁꯕꯃꯤꯁꯟ ꯄꯤꯕꯗ ꯂꯝ ꯂꯝꯅ ꯑꯏꯕ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯦꯁꯟ ꯍꯧꯗ꯭ꯔꯤꯉꯩꯗ ꯄꯤꯈꯠꯄꯗ ꯖꯔꯃꯅꯤꯅ ꯄꯤꯈꯠꯄꯗ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯁꯨ ꯅꯝꯕꯔ 1ꯗ ꯑꯥꯔꯝ ꯐꯣꯔꯁꯦꯁ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁꯦꯜ ꯄꯥꯋꯔꯁ ꯗꯦꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯐꯝꯁꯤ ꯄꯟꯕꯤꯔꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ USA ꯅꯁꯨ ꯌꯨꯅꯥꯏꯇꯦꯗ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯁ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯑꯃꯦꯔꯤꯀꯥꯅꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯥꯡꯗ ꯑꯞꯁꯐꯥꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯥꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯏꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯥꯡꯗ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥ ꯒꯚꯔꯟꯃꯦꯟꯠꯅ ꯂꯧꯈꯠꯂꯛꯏꯕ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯊꯦꯡꯅꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯥꯡꯗ ꯂꯧꯈꯠꯂꯛꯏꯕ ꯊꯕꯛ ꯊꯧꯔꯝꯁꯤꯡꯕꯨ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯄ ꯐꯣꯡꯗꯣꯛꯄ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ CRPC 197ꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯥꯗ ꯏꯝꯄ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤ ꯂꯧꯊꯣꯛꯅꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯐꯝꯁꯤꯡꯅꯆꯤꯡꯕ ꯌꯥꯎꯔꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯃꯥꯂꯦꯝꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯕꯥꯛ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯍ꯭ꯌꯨꯃꯟ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯁꯤꯆꯨꯋꯦꯁꯟꯁꯦ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯃꯑꯣꯡꯗ ꯌꯦꯡꯉꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯃꯤꯠꯌꯦꯡ ꯇꯥꯃꯤꯟꯅꯁꯤ
Thank you.
Very good. So a bit of commotion here because apparently the website of UNTV is down. No, we don't know why. But bottom line, we are resuming, and we kindly ask you to. We are resuming, and this session will be recorded. We kindly ask you to start over from the very beginning.
So, all right. So are we ready? Are we ready to start?
Just give me 1 second. Are we ready?
Wait, I must move away from the sun, I think.
Okay, we are ready. Anytime you want, please start.
Starting now. I would like to welcome everyone warmly to this session of the hearings of the Commission of Inquiry My name is Navi Pillay, and I'm the chair of the Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. I'm here with my colleagues, Commissioners Chris Sidoti and Milun Qatari. The Commission of Inquiry was created by the UN Human Rights Council in May 2021 to investigate alleged violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights law leading up and since 13 April 2021, and all underlying root causes of recurrent tensions, instability, and protraction of conflict, including systemic discrimination and repression based on national, ethnic, racial, or religious identity. The Commission reports to the Human Rights Council and to the General Assembly. We have already delivered 2 reports before the Human Rights Council in June this year and before the General Assembly Third Committee in October this year. And in the scope of our investigations, we have scheduled these sets of public hearings on 2 topics. One, the closure orders and terrorism designation of a number of Palestinian NGOs, and on the incident surrounding the killing of the journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Victims, witnesses, civil society organizations, and legal representatives will be invited to provide relevant testimony to the Commission in this forum. That the fact that the Commission will focus the hearings on these incidents does not mean that it considers them as more important than others. The Commission will also only be able to hear a limited number of CSOs, representatives, witnesses, and victims. But we do hope to organize other sets of hearings as we progress with our investigations. We are very grateful to those who have agreed to participate in these public hearings, which will be broadcast live in English. The proceedings and the publicity given to the testimonies have been explained to the witnesses, and they have all agreed to testify in public of their own free will. They know that what they say is being broadcast and recorded, and they are also free to decline to answer any question put to them. So let me emphasize that these proceedings are not judicial. We are not a court, nor are we a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. During the hearings, questions will only be put to the witnesses by the 3 commissioners. The aim is to allow victims and survivors on all sides of the conflict to speak for themselves to the international communities in a formal but comfortable setting. In that way, we hope that their concerns will be later better understood by a worldwide audience, and especially in the region where the events have taken place. The Commission has invited concerned states to provide all documentary evidence and information in their possession or under their control pertinent to the designation of the Palestinian NGOs and the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. So let me conclude these opening remarks by saying that we are conscious of the pain that some of you coming here and recounting their sufferings face. And in that light, particularly, we are grateful to those who agreed to participate in these proceedings. If at any stage you feel uncomfortable and would like a break, please let us know. So with these remarks, I now will highlight what we expect from the testimony. So to the representatives of the Palestinian Journalists Syndicate, during your testimony, the Commission would like to hear from you on 1, the treatment of media outlets and journalists, including
guarantees civil and political rights and provides for progressive realization of economic, social, and cultural rights. We have also enacted laws and framed regulations in order to address gaps in the legal framework to meet our human rights obligations. Our institutional framework also includes constitutional bodies such as National Human Rights Commission and separate national commissions for women, minorities, scheduled castes, and scheduled tribes. Our laws continue to evolve to meet the requirements and challenges of our society. Our Constitution has undergone 103 amendments so far. We have presently undertaken a comprehensive review of existing laws and legislations, including repealing of obsolete colonial era legislations. Over 1,400 laws have been repealed so far as a part of this process. Our independent, proactive, and progressive judiciary has played a key role in ensuring implementation of our human rights commitments. Indian courts have relied on international human rights instruments for progressively interpreting the existing laws of India. In fact, judicial interpretation of the constitutional and legislative texts have contributed significantly to the protection of the human rights. The Supreme Court of India, in a landmark judgment, has held that any international convention consistent with fundamental rights and in harmony with their spirit must be read into these provisions to enlarge the meaning and content thereof to promote the object of constitutional guarantees. Our vibrant media and proactive civil society have been vital in drawing attention to the instances of violation of human rights of the people. Mr. President, India with 1.3 billion nationals is home to 1/6 of humanity and is an incredibly diverse country. Despite its several achievements, India remains a country with many developmental challenges, simultaneously negotiating social, cultural, religious, political, and economic transformations. Realizing inclusive and sustainable development in line with Agenda 2030 is a high priority for the government. We remain convinced that inclusive and equitable development is the key to securing a life of dignity, security, empowerment, and freedom for all. But the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic have been particularly challenging. Our commitment to promotion and protection of basic human rights has been at the center of our strategy to deal with COVID-19 pandemic. We achieved that by giving direct and free food support to 800 million persons. This for over 2 years. Under Prime Minister's scheme for welfare of poor and financial support to more than 445 million citizens, especially to the vulnerable sections. Prime Minister's Cares for Children is a special initiative to support the education and living expenses of children who lost both parents till they attain the 23 years of age. In addition, India has also supplied over 270 million vaccine doses to around 100 countries during the pandemic, including the United Nations Blue Helmets. India is pioneering in the use of public digital infrastructure for good governance and realization of sustainable development goals. This involves building innovative governance systems and efficient citizen-oriented services by leveraging the digital technologies. Public service delivery has been scaled up through the use of biometric identity assigned to every resident and aligned with the financial inclusion program of the government called Jan Dhan Yojana for bringing affordable access to financial services. With 1.16 billion telecom subscribers, 1.3 billion unique digital biometric identities, and more than 460 million newly opened bank accounts, India has transferred social benefits of more than US $300 billion digitally and coordinated 2 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses. the scheme of the Government of India called Ayushman Bharat, the world's largest health insurance scheme, benefits around 500 million poor persons for free treatment of up to $500,000 Indian rupees. In order to grant equality and empowerment of women, the government has enacted legislation on triple talaq, declaring the instant divorce granted by pronouncement of talaq 3 times as void and illegal. Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013 has expanded the definitions of rape, sexual violence, and trafficking with stricter punishments. To safeguard the rights and welfare of workers, the government has enacted 3 labor codes that harmonize needs of workers and the industry, covering over 500 million workers from the organized and unorganized sectors and the self-employed, and seek to ensure minimum wages, social security, as well as pay parity for women workers. Mr. President, preservation and protection of the environment has been a central pillar of India's civilization and culture. The Supreme Court of India has recognized the right to clean environment as a part of individuals' right to life guaranteed by the Constitution of India. India has also been at the forefront of global action against climate change. Apart from meeting its commitments under the Paris Agreement through ambitious domestic actions, India has also launched 3 global initiatives for promoting climate action. The first is the International Solar Alliance that promotes greater use of solar energy and has been supported by 110 members. The second is the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure that supports development, sustainable and inclusive infrastructure. And last month, the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji launched the Mission Life, that is Lifestyle for the Environment, with the United Nations Secretary General, which encourages individuals to change lifestyles to protect the environment. Mr. President, broken and emaciated by colonialism, India in 1947 was an unprecedented political startup aggregating over 550 principalities, burdened with a divided society and economically anemic. Today, we are the world's 3rd largest economy in terms of purchasing power parity and a standard bearer of democracy and diversity. India's contribution to global human rights discourse since its independence is very well known. India's civilizational ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam mean the world is the family, and Sarvodaya, which means welfare of all, have inspired it to contribute to the promotion and protection of human rights globally. India has been playing a leading role in global action against contemporary challenges of terrorism, pandemics, climate change, radicalization, and violent extremism, sustainable development, which all impact on enjoyment of human rights of people. India's developmental partnership with Global South contributes to enjoyment of human rights in partner countries. Mr. President, I now invite the representatives of various ministries of India to outline the specific steps taken by India forward towards fulfilling its obligations in various domains of human rights. First, I invite the Vice Chancellor of the National Law University to speak on the preparation of the National Report. Thereafter, the representatives of the Ministries of Home Affairs, Women and Child Development, Minority Affairs, Social Justice and Empowerment, Rural Development, and National Institution for Transforming India will take the floor.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Mr. President, I am Professor Sri Krishna Deva Rao, representing the National Law University. We prepared the first draft of the National Report of India at the request of the Ministry of External Affairs. We closely followed the relevant guidelines of the OSCHR for the preparation, and efforts were made to make it as exhaustive, as inclusive as possible. The task required rigorous and comprehensive survey of the status of enjoyment of human rights in India, the governmental initiatives undertaken to enhance the same, and the challenges the country has been facing in the realization of human rights for its people. We therefore consulted several ministries and departments of the Government of India, relevant initiatives, schemes, and programs to reflect in the report the contributions and challenges to India's human rights. In addition, our report benefited from extensive consultations with other stakeholders consisting of non-governmental organizations, civil society groups, academia, national human rights institutions, judiciary, and domain experts. These consultations reflected different perspectives and diversity of views in the report. The report before you offers a comprehensive picture of India's achievements in realization of human rights obligations. Thank you.
Mr. President, I am Sunil Kumar Barnwal, and I represent the Ministry of Home Affairs. The entire gamut of civil and political rights are enshrined in the Indian Constitution. Civil and criminal laws have inbuilt safeguards to uphold the rights of individuals and provide a special protection to the most vulnerable sections of the society. One of the significant efforts to protect human rights has been the enactment of the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993, under which the National Human Rights Commission and State Human Rights Commissions have been established with the mandate to protect, promote, observe, and study human rights as specified under the Constitution, as also the international covenants ratified by India. Terrorism is a serious threat to international peace and security, indeed to the entire humanity. It is the gravest form of violation of the most basic of human rights, the right to life. The government has taken several policy measures and enacted legislations to deal with the menace of terrorism and to protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. These legislations seek to secure a balance between the liberty of citizens and security of the state, overseen by an independent judiciary to ensure that there is no abuse or misuse. A similar approach has been taken to protect the freedom of speech and expression while ensuring that this right is not abused. There are adequate safeguards and reasonable restrictions to curb hate speech, both online and offline. The government has issued advisories and sensitized internet service providers to address the problem of fake news and rumors. India recognizes human trafficking as a serious crime. Article 23 of the Constitution prohibits trafficking in human beings and other forms of forced labor. The Indian Penal Code has been amended in 2013 to enlarge the scope of trafficking-related offenses and provides for a stricter punishment to offenders. The government has also initiated a comprehensive review of major criminal laws in India in consultation with all the stakeholders. Law enforcement authorities and security forces are committed to dealing with law and order and security situations strictly in accordance with the principles of legal certainty, necessity, and proportionality. There are effective grievance redressal mechanisms to deal with any allegations of violation. India continues to prioritize human rights education as an integral part of the induction and in-service trainings imparted to police, security, and judicial service personnel. I thank you.
I am Indra Malo and I represent the Ministry of Women and Child Development and will address the issue of the rights of the child. India is committed to ensuring the survival, protection, development and participation of children following the principle of best interests of the child. The Constitution guarantees right to education to children between 6 to 14 years of age. In addition, the National Policy for Children of 2013 and National Plan of Action of 2016 focus on children's access to learning, nutrition and institutional support for enabling them to grow and develop to their full potential. The school midday meal scheme provides nutritious food to 118 million children across 1.12 million schools. India has one of the world's largest outreach program, Integrated Child Development Services, which provides a package of services comprising supplementary nutrition, immunization, health checkups and referral services, preschool non-formal education, and nutrition education. As of June 2022, there are 1.39 million operational early education centers benefiting 77 million children from 6 months to 6 years old. The Juvenile Justice Act of 2015 mandates a security net of service delivery structures to provide institutional and non-institutional care for children in need of care and protection and children in conflict with law through foster care, kinship-based sponsorship care, adoption, and aftercare. India has enacted stringent laws to protect children from sexual exploitation, child marriage, and child labor. Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012 acknowledges various kinds of child sex abuse and provides stringent punishment for the same. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act of 2006 makes child marriage a cognizable and non-bailable offense. Under the Right to Education Act and the Juvenile Justice Act, corporal punishment is prohibited in schools and institutions. In addition, to ensure safe cyberspace for children, the IT rules of 2011 mandate IT intermediaries such as internet, network, telecom service providers, search engines, and social media intermediaries, among others, to ensure that content harmful to minors is not displayed in any way. India has ratified the ILO Minimum Age Convention and the Worst Forms of Child Labor Convention. The Child and Adolescent Labor Prohibition and Regulation Amendment Act of 2016 prohibits employment of children. Commissions for Protection of Child Rights Act of 2005 mandates establishment of statutory commissions at the center and state levels to protect, uphold, and promote child rights. The National Commission for Protection of Child Rights monitors the implementation of these laws and ensure that all laws, policies, programs related to child rights are in consonance with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the Constitution of India. India remains committed to leave no child behind. Our statutory provisions and institutional mechanisms ensure that child protection and child welfare issues are addressed effectively. I thank you. I now turn to represent the Ministry of Minority Affairs. The Constitution of India recognizes both religious and linguistic minorities and provides for equality before law, equal protection of laws, and non-discrimination against any citizen on the basis of only religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. India is home to almost all religions of the world. Out of India's total approximate population of 1.37 billion in 2022, Muslims constitute 194.54 million, Christians constitute 31.5 million, Sikhs constitute 23.3 million, Buddhists constitute 9.59 million, Jains constitute 5.5 million, and Parsis number approximately 58,000 of the total population. All persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice, and propagate religion, subject only to public order, morality, health, and such other provisions as laid down in the Constitution. Linguistic minorities have the right to conserve their distinct language, script, or culture. Minorities enjoy the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. The National Commission for Minorities has the mandate to protect the constitutional and legal rights of minorities. It evaluates the progress of the development of minorities, monitors the working of the safeguards provided in the Constitution and in laws enacted by the government, and looks into specific complaints. The Commission for Linguistic Minorities oversees all matters relating to the safeguards provided for linguistic minorities. In addition, the National Commission for Minority Educational Institutes was established in 2004, and it deals with all matters related with education of minorities. A range of legislations have been enacted to protect freedom of religion and punish offenses such as promotion of enmity between different groups on ground of religion, committing a deliberate and malicious act to outrage the religious feelings, or acts prejudicial to maintenance of national integration and harmony. Most recently, the Supreme Court of India has directed law enforcement agencies to take immediate suo motu cognizance of hate speech and proceed against the offenders in accordance with law. The government has launched a number of initiatives pertaining to education, skill development, access to credit, infrastructural and social development of regions with high concentration of minority populations to ensure the welfare of minorities. Importantly, in all such initiatives, 30% of benefits are earmarked for girls and women. I thank you.
Mr. President, I am Rajesh Tiwari. I speak on behalf of the Ministry of Women and Child Development on the issue of rights of women. India attaches the highest priority to ensuring safety and security of women and is committed to eliminating all forms of discrimination against women and to ensuring their holistic empowerment. The Constitution of India not only provides for equality, but also authorizes the state to take affirmative measures to promote gender equality. India has adopted a multi-pronged strategy to eradicate gender stereotypes that perpetuate discrimination against women. The measures aimed at bringing about attitudinal change span the domains of law, education, and training, and include proactive measures in the form of administrative practices, schemes, and programs to overcome specific impediments to gender equality and provide enabling conditions for enjoyment of rights. The government has administered various special laws for the protection and empowerment of women, such as Domestic Violence Act of 2005, Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act of 2013, Maternity Benefit Act of 2017, and Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of 2021. These legislations promote, inter alia, equal participation of women in the workforce, ensures a safe and dignified work environment, and facilitate overall socio-economic empowerment of women. Paid maternity leave for women employees has been increased from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. The right to legal abortion has now been extended from 20 weeks to 24 weeks of pregnancy. The Supreme Court of India, in its recent judgment, recognized the right to legal abortion for all women, irrespective of their marital status. The government has also taken various measures for safety, security, and empowerment of women, such as, firstly, one-stop centers for women in distress and 24 hours helpline that provide emergency police, medical and legal aid, including counseling and shelter. Secondly, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao program has an exclusive focus on protection and education of girl child to improve child sex ratio and social behavior change. Thirdly, fast-track special courts have been set up for speedy disposal of cases of sexual violence against women and children. anti-human trafficking units in all districts, and women help desks at nearly all police stations ensure safe and secure environment for women. Fourthly, specialized attention has been given by the government on empowerment of women. Schemes such as Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana, promoting financial inclusion, Stand Up India and Mudra Yojana, facilitating bank loans and entrepreneurial activities, have resulted in positive outcomes for women, which is reflected, among others, in the gender wage gap reduction that now stands at 13%, at par with many developed countries, as per latest ILO estimates. Political representation of women in parliament has witnessed a rise from 12% in 2014 to 15% in 2022. In Panchayati Raj institutions, which are essentially local bodies at district, block, and village level, representation of women is approximately 46%, as against the constitutional provision of 33% reservation. In addition, the government regularly conducts awareness programs about various laws relating to women's rights through workshops, cultural events, seminars, training, and advertisements in media. I thank you.
Mr. President, I'm Yogita Swarup and I'm representing the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. In line with its commitment to political, social, and economic inclusion, India has taken steps to empower the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and is fully committed to their welfare. We have established the National Commission for Scheduled Caste and the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes to provide safeguards against exploitation of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and to promote and protect their social, educational, economic, and cultural rights and interests. India's affirmative action program for the empowerment of vulnerable sections of the society is without parallel in its scale and dimension and ensures representation at various levels of decision-making, such as in legislative bodies, government jobs, as well as in educational institutions. The Prevention of Atrocities Act related to the protection of human rights of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, as amended in 2016 and 2018, provides for special courts for the trial of such offences and the rehabilitation of victims. 193 special courts have been established as of 2022. A national helpline has also been established to ensure better implementation of these laws and to build awareness. In keeping with the vision of the government to economically empower the vulnerable and the marginalized sections, the budgetary allocations for their welfare schemes has been increased to about $11.25 billion in 2021. The Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act of 2019 was enacted to prohibit discrimination against such persons in all spheres of life and to secure for them social security, education, and health facilities. In a landmark judgment of 2018, the Supreme Court of India decriminalized adult consensual same-sex relations. India was one of the first few Asian countries to do so. Similarly, the Government of India, in its endeavor to secure the rights of the elderly persons, formulated a national policy on older persons in 1999 and enacted the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act of 2007 to ensure financial and food security, health care, equitable share in development, protection against abuse and exploitation, and improve the quality of life of the elderly. Also, an amendment bill is under consideration to make the act more effective. An umbrella scheme called Atal Vayo Abhyuday Yojana was launched in 2021 for elderly care, awareness generation, capacity building. Further, an online portal called Sacred was launched in 2021 to keep the senior citizens economically independent after retirement. The Prohibition of Manual Scavengers and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013 prohibits employment as manual scavengers and hazardous manual cleaning of sewer and septic tanks. A national action plan is under implementation to eliminate manual cleaning of sewer and septic tanks and promote mechanization of cleaning operations across urban local bodies. For the welfare of scheduled tribes, the government has enacted the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act of 2006. The government has also invested in the skill development programs for all its citizens and has already trained 61.5 million people with special focus on the marginalized and the vulnerable communities. I thank you.
Mr. President, Yadav, and I represent the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities. The issues concerning with empowerment of persons with disabilities are on the center stage of national development agenda of our government, and we are working for the welfare of 26.8 million persons with disabilities in India. India was amongst the first few countries to ratify the United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016 provides for community life, non-discrimination, access to justice, and protection from abuse, violence, and exploitation. It also provides reservation in government jobs and seats in government and government-aided higher educational institutions. The Rehabilitation Council of India Act of 1992 provides framework for rehabilitation courses and professionals. The National Trust for the Welfare of Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation, and Multiple Disabilities Act of 1999 provides special care initiatives. There are 9 national institutes to take care of specific needs of persons with locomotor, visual, speech and hearing, intellectual, psychosocial, and multiple disabilities. These institutes provide rehabilitative services to about 2.5 million persons with disabilities annually. The government implements various schemes and programs for empowerment of persons with disabilities. During the last 5 years, aids and appliances of worth about $180 million have been distributed to 2.3 million persons with disabilities. 1.42 million students with disabilities have been benefited under scholarship schemes. The government also supports non-governmental organizations for undertaking various projects such as schools for different categories of persons with disabilities. During the last 5 years, 3,954 projects run by various non-governmental organizations have been supported, benefiting about 300,000 persons with disabilities. The government is implementing Unique Disability Identity UDID project to create a national database for persons with disabilities. So far, more than 8.3 million UDID cards have been generated. Independent chief commissioners and state commissioners for persons with disabilities have been appointed to monitor implementation of the Act and look into the grievances regarding deprivation of rights of persons with disabilities. The government remains committed to the empowerment and inclusive growth of persons with disabilities through proactive policies that are invariably framed in consultation with stakeholders. I thank you.
Mr. President, I'm Nivedita Prasad and I speak on behalf of the Ministry of Rural Development. India is strongly committed to holistic, inclusive and sustainable development for all its citizens, including the poor and the marginalized. India, with more than 65% of the population in rural areas, has adopted multi-pronged strategy to address multiple dimensions of poverty and improve the people's well-being. The enactment of the National Food Security Act 2013 marked a paradigm shift from welfare to rights-based approach, as it legally entitled 2/3 of the Indian population to receive subsidized food grains under the world's largest targeted public distribution system. The One Nation, One Ration Card plan empowers about 810 million beneficiaries under the Act, including the migrant workers. In addition, the government has taken several initiatives aimed at reducing poverty and providing basic amenities to the people. The Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act provides guaranteed employment to 100 days to rural poor households to improve their livelihood base. Under the National Rural Livelihood Mission, more than 80 million rural households have been mobilized into 7.6 million self-help groups and have been provided financial and technical assistance for livelihood promotion. Under the Housing for All scheme, construction of 20.5 million houses in rural areas and 6.4 million houses in urban areas have been completed. The rural sanitation coverage stands at 100% under the Clean India campaign. More than 94% of the population have access to clean drinking water sources. The Rural Road Connectivity Scheme has improved the transportation network, reduced travel time, and improved access to schools, hospitals, and markets. The National Social Assistance Program provides financial assistance for elderly persons, widows, persons with disabilities, and families who have lost their primary breadwinner. Representation of women and marginalized communities in decision-making bodies at the district, block, and village level and other local bodies have been ensured through the 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts of 1992. Good governance measures like direct benefit transfers and Aadhaar payment systems have ensured transparency and accurate targeting of beneficiaries. For instance, 61.6 million workers under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme have been linked to Aadhaar-based payments. We remain resolute to end poverty in all forms and dimensions and empower communities. I thank you.
Mr. President, I am Shashipal and I speak on behalf of the National Institution for Transforming India. During the past 75 years, India has made unprecedented growth and development. For instance, we are the world's second biggest food producer, growing about 315 million tons of food grains. Recent surveys point to a balanced gender ratio and life expectancy at birth to above 70 years. In the last 16 years, 415 million Indians have left lives of poverty behind. India has the world's third largest ecosystem for startups, with over 77,000 startups across 656 districts of the country, of which 107 are unicorns with a valuation of over $300 billion as of September 2022. The 650 million active internet users in the country today will expectedly cross 900 million by 2025. Much of the growth in internet users continues to be driven by rural India. We have 1,043 universities, 42,343 colleges, and 11,779 standalone institutions, many of them being private initiatives. India is strongly committed to holistic, inclusive, and sustainable development and to meeting the goals and targets set under the Sustainable Development Goals framework on time. India has developed a robust Sustainable Development Goals localization model whereby states and districts drive the adoption of global goals and targets with local means of implementation, monitoring, and evaluation framework. India recently assessed its achievements on Sustainable Development Goals both at the union and state level and presents its voluntary national review to the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. The first voluntary national review was submitted in 2017 and the second one in 2020. Despite the unprecedented challenges of the pandemic, India in 2022 has achieved more than 50% target in most of the goals of Agenda 2030. I thank you.
That concludes individual presentation from all members of my delegation. I now hand over the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation, all the work, serious work done by the delegation, and for being here with us. Vamos a comenzar nuestro diálogo interactivo. Les recuerdo que el tiempo de intervención son 55 segundos. El uso de las palabras recomendar o recomendación garantizará que las partes pertinentes de sus declaraciones se incluyan en la sección de recomendaciones del informe. Tiene la palabra en primer lugar el representante de la República Democrática de Corea.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pleased for being first. The DPRK delegation warmly welcomes the delegation of India and notes with appreciation its first national report in depth to the UPR. We commend the government of India for its strong efforts and tangible progress in implementing comprehensive development strategy through accelerated economic growth and broader social safety nets, with a strong focus on vulnerable groups and on women and children. Wishing the India further success, we have two recommendations. One, continue its efforts to ensure safety and security of women, eliminate all forms of discrimination against women, and ensure their empowerment. Two, continue its efforts for ensuring universal access to affordable health care for all, and with a special emphasis on groups in situations of vulnerability and enhancing the quality.
Tiene la palabra Dinamarca.
Mr. President, Denmark welcomes the delegation of India. Denmark commends India's efforts in improving gender rights for women, girls, and transgender people, and that India had made strong efforts to combat child labor with the ratification of ILO Convention number 138 and 182. Women and girls are especially vulnerable to the repercussions of climate change. Denmark recommends India to 1. Implement existing measures and ensure that adequate resources are set aside to strengthen girls' education and women's labor market participation in order to better their economic resilience towards climate change repercussions. 2. Improve the enforcement of the legal provisions to prohibiting harmful and discriminatory practices against women and girls in accordance with CEDAW. 3. Ratify the Convention Against Torture. Denmark wishes India a successful review. Thank you.
Thank you. Djibouti, vous avez la parole.
Monsieur le Président, Djibouti souhaite la bienvenue à la délégation de haut niveau de l'Inde et la remercie pour la présentation de son rapport national. Ma délégation salue l'Inde pour le renforcement de ses mesures prises en faveur de l'égalité et de la non-discrimination et l'encourage à fournir des protections adéquates en faveur des minorités, des castes et des populations vulnérables. Aussi, Djibouti souhaite formuler à l'Inde les recommandations suivantes. Premièrement, continuer la poursuite de la mise en œuvre des programmes et mesures d'accès au logement pour les sans-abri ainsi que celles visant une Inde sans taudis dans le cadre de l'atteinte des objectifs un logement pour tous d'ici 2024. Deuxièmement, intensifier les efforts de lutte contre le traite des personnes, notamment le travail forcé et la servitude, en accélérant le processus de mise en œuvre du projet de loi 2022 sur la prévention, la prise en charge et la réadaptation des personnes victimes de la traite. Enfin, Djibouti souhaite plein succès à l'Inde à l'occasion de cet examen. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Tiene la palabra Egipto, por video.
سيد الرئيس، يثني وفد مصر على تعاون حكومة الهند مع الآليات المعنية بحقوق الإنسان والتزامها بتقديم تقارير، كما يشيد بالدور الهام الذي تطلع به اللجنة الوطنية لحقوق الإنسان وتحضيرات ذات الصلة بإعداد خطة العمل الوطنية حول حقوق الإنسان. وفي إطار الحوار البناء نود أن نتقدم بالتوصيات التالية إلى حكومة الهند. أولا، النظر في زيادة الإنفاق العام لضمان حصول الجميع على خدمات رعاية صحية عالية الجودة. ثانيا، توسيع نطاق تطبيق قانون حق الأطفال في التعليم المجاني والإلزامي لعام 2009 لضمان حصول الجميع على التعليم الابتدائي والثانوي على مدار 12 سنة. ثالثا، مواصلة تعزيز الجهود ذات الصلة بضمان الحصول على مياه شرب وخدمات صرف صحي آمنة ونظيفة لا سيما للنساء والفتيات. ختاما، نتمنى لوفد الهند كل التوفيق خلال الجلسة وشكرا.
Thank you. El Salvador tiene la palabra.
Señor presidente, agradecemos a la delegación de la India por la presentación de su informe. Con un espíritu constructivo, El Salvador recomienda fortalecer sus políticas para la mitigación de la pobreza, continuar y fortalecer su estrategia para asegurar el acceso universal a una asistencia médica asequible para todos, mediante el enfoque de la universalización, la asequibilidad y la mejora de las infraestructuras médicas. Continuar la adopción de medidas para eliminar todas las formas de malnutrición mediante el aumento de la seguridad alimentaria en todo su territorio. Acelerar y fortalecer las medidas para prevenir y proteger a los niños de la explotación sexual, el castigo corporal, el matrimonio infantil y el trabajo infantil, así como para brindar apoyo a los niños víctimas de delitos sexuales. Deseamos a India éxitos en la implementación de las recomendaciones. Gracias.
Gracias. Estonia tiene la palabra. Embajadora.
Estonia welcomes the delegation of India to this UPR session. We welcome India's efforts to tackle the poverty and ensure greater access to water and sanitation, and the government's commitment to eradicate violence against women. Estonia gladly notes that India has ratified ILO conventions on minimum age to employment and on the worst forms of child labor. Estonia would like to recommend India to carefully review the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act and the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act to ensure freedom of expression, assembly and association, and the protection of civil society organizations and human rights defenders. Persistently work to ensure and protect independent judiciary and functioning human rights institutions. Accept a country visit from the special rapporteurs on torture, right to privacy, right to freedom of assembly and association. Ratify the Convention Against Torture and its optional protocol, the second optional protocol to the ICCPR and the Rome Statute. Estonia wishes a successful review meeting. I thank you.
Thank you. Eswatini tiene la palabra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Eswatini warmly welcomes the delegation from India. We welcome developments made during the last review process. We applaud India for measures taken to combat corruption, improve accountability in government institutions. In the spirit of constructive dialogue, Eswatini recommends to India: 1. Ratify the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. 2. Ensure that legislation for health care workforce ensures that healthcare workers are paid fair wages. 3. Continue strengthening existing child protection mechanism and dissuade child labor. 4. Further strengthen laws that protect religious minorities. In conclusion, Eswatini wishes India success in its review. I thank you.
Thank you. Etiopía tiene la palabra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ethiopia welcomes the high-level delegation of India to this UPR session and thanks the delegation for the comprehensive national report and oral update today. Ethiopia commends India for implementing the recommendation received during the previous UPR cycles and for the well performance on 8 of the 15 SDGs in 2020-2021, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. New measures introduced for the welfare and empowerment of women and children, persons with disabilities and other marginalized communities are also to be commended. Ethiopia would like to make the following 3 recommendations. 1. Reinforce efforts to implement transformational developmental initiatives undertaken to leave no one behind. 2. Strengthen the efforts of implementation of the Integrated Child Development Scheme and Midday Meal Scheme in schools. 3. Step up efforts to eliminate any type of caste-based discrimination in practice. I thank you.
Thank you. Fiji tiene la palabra.
Mr. President, Fiji welcomes the delegation of India and thanks them for their national report. We especially commend the Indian government's commitment to ratify the UN Convention Against Torture, or UNCAT, India's strengthening of existing legal frameworks guaranteeing protection against torture, its widespread capacity-building initiatives on torture prevention, and its acceptance in all 3 previous UPR cycles to ratify UNCAT is encouraging and commendable. As a co-state of the Convention Against Torture initiative, Fiji takes this opportunity to emphasize that the ratification and implementation of UNCAT would present India with the opportunity to further strengthen its national anti-torture framework and to join the international community in united efforts against torture and ill treatment. In the spirit of constructive engagement, Fiji recommends that the Government of India ratify the UN Convention Against Torture. I thank you.
Thank you. Finland tiene la palabra, embajadora.
Finland welcomes the engagement of India in the UPR process. We commend India for the achievements made, including the ruling of the Supreme Court of India that all women can obtain abortions up to 24 weeks into their pregnancies. Finland offers the following recommendations. 1. To take measures to stop violence against women with disabilities by implementing provisions of amended criminal laws pertaining to sexual violence. 2. To decentralize and simplify the unique disability identity card system and its certification process. 3. To strengthen the implementation of the Whistleblowers Protection Act 2014 and provide universal protection to the whistleblowers. Finland wishes India a successful UPR. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Países Bajos tienen la palabra.
Mr. President, the Kingdom of the Netherlands thanks India for its national report. We commend India on progress in ensuring the rights of women and girls, such as the prohibition of gender-based selective abortion, child marriages, sexual harassment in the workplace, and marital rape. However, much remains to be done to improve the situation of women and girls and other vulnerable groups badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Netherlands recommends India to strengthen enforcement mechanisms for the prevention of gender-based violence by allocating additional budget for the elimination on the long term through early childhood education and awareness raising, and by establishing and resourcing institutions to support victims, and two, to take measures to prevent the abuse of so-called anti-conversion laws, ensuring that such laws do not infringe upon the constitutionally guaranteed freedom of religion
Le
and
Gabon
belief.
a la parole. Le Gabon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La délégation du Gabon souhaite la bienvenue à la délégation de l'Inde et la remercie pour la présentation de son rapport national. Nous notons avec satisfaction que l'Inde est fermement résolue à renforcer son cadre juridique lié aux principes d'égalité et de non-discrimination et à lutter contre les changements climatiques. Ma délégation, qui encourage ce dynamisme, recommande à l'Inde ce qui suit. 1. Poursuivre ses efforts dans la mise en œuvre de ces politiques globales visant à offrir à tous les enfants un enseignement de qualité gratuit et obligatoire. 2. Veiller à la mise en place des infrastructures nécessaires au bien-être et au développement des orphelins. 3. Allouer des ressources suffisantes pour atteindre les cibles des objectifs de développement durable visant à réduire la mortalité maternelle et infantile. Nous souhaitons à l'Inde un fructueux examen. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Merci. Georgia tiene la palabra, embajador.
Thank you, Mr. President. Georgia welcomes and thanks the delegation of India for the presentation of the national report. My delegation welcomes the achieved progress in ensuring universal access to affordable health care for all. We positively evaluate the establishment of the task force for preparation of India's National Action Plan on Human Rights by the National Human Rights Commission. We appreciate India's commitment to zero tolerance against corruption policy and to combat trafficking in persons. Herewith, Georgia would like to recommend to India, first, to continue steps allowing the acceleration of the progress in several aspects of the healthcare, including the further reduction of childhood malnutrition and maternal mortality rate. And second, to continue expansion of access to education, especially at the primary and secondary levels. With this, we wish the delegation of India a very successful UPR. Thank you.
Thank you. Alemania tiene la palabra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Germany welcomes the delegation of India and commends India for its efforts to fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals. However, Germany remains concerned about the rights of marginalized groups, in particular religious minorities, as well as women and girls. Germany recommends to 1. Improve the protection of women and girls' rights by improving access to health care, education, housing, sanitation, and the labor market, notably by increasing the budgetary allocation. 2. Amend the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act to ensure it does not unduly restrict the right to freedom of association of NGOs. 3. Strengthen the National Human Rights Commission to help fulfill its mandate fully in line with the Paris Principles. And 4. Take adequate measures to guarantee and monitor the effective implementation of the Prevention of Atrocities Act, providing legal means for an increased protection of vulnerable groups like the Dalit. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ghana tiene la palabra. Por video.
Go. Thank you, Mr. President. Ghana welcomes the delegation of India and thanks them for the presentation of their national report. The strategies adopted by the government of India to combat corruption and alleviate poverty are highly commendable. We further applaud the establishment of the National Legal Services Authority to provide free legal aid to the underprivileged, marginalized, and vulnerable in the country. In the spirit of constructive dialogue, Ghana recommends that India establishes a national action plan for combating hate crimes, racism, and negative stereotypes against people of African descent, and ensure that perpetrators of such crimes are held accountable. And also, India should intensify its efforts to ratify Unhrc and its optional protocols. We wish India success with the review process. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Grecia tiene la palabra, embajador.
Señor Presidente, Greece warmly welcomes the delegation of India. We appreciate India's determined efforts towards poverty alleviation, which include provision of employment guarantee, free education, and strengthening of the healthcare infrastructure, including through the Initiative for Clean Water. We recommend India on its environmental initiatives, which have seen an important reduction of its carbon emissions since 2016. We congratulate the government of India on the enactment of the Transgender Persons Act, protecting the rights of transgender persons. Greece offers the following recommendations. 1. Ensure that laws governing the freedom of religion are fully enforced, taking into account the multi-religious and multicultural nature of Indian society. And 2. Continue efforts to improve the legal framework on the freedom of expression, including strengthening a safe space for journalists and civil society organizations. We wish India a successful review. Thank you.
Thank you. Santa Sede tiene la palabra.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Holy See welcomes the delegation of India during the presentation of its national report for the fourth cycle of the Universal Periodic Review and wishes to present the following recommendations. 1. To guarantee that Foreign Currency Regulation Act certificates are issued in a non-discriminatory fashion. 2. To ensure that state and local legislations are not in conflict with national legislation and constitutional provisions with regard to the freedom of religion or belief, including by repealing laws that are used to prevent, discourage, or prosecute conversion. 3. To adopt a comprehensive national law to prosecute sectarian violence by individuals or groups, including propagating violence or threats of violence against religious minorities. 4. To continue its efforts to enhance the protection of human rights, especially by eliminating discrimination against women and discrimination based on caste and religion. And 5. To place a nationwide moratorium on the application of the death penalty with a view to its eventual abolition. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Iceland tiene la palabra.
Mr. President, Iceland welcomes the delegation of India and its national report. Iceland commends India for decriminalizing consensual same-sex relations. Iceland makes the following recommendations. 1. Declare an immediate moratorium on executions and abolish the death penalty. 2. Develop and implement a national action plan to prevent and combat gender-based violence. 3. Guarantee the right to sexual and reproductive health information, education, and services for all. 4. Adapt legislation to combat honor killings. 5. Legalize same-sex marriage between consenting adults. 6. Amend the Transgender Persons Act of 2019 and legally recognize the gender identity of trans persons. 7. Take action to combat hate speech in line with recommendations made by the Law Commission of India in 2017. I wish India all success for its review. I thank you.
Thank you. Indonesia tiene la palabra.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation thanks India for the presentation of their report. Indonesia welcomes the progress that India has made since its last review, particularly with regard to ensuring universal access to affordable health care. Indonesia offers the following recommendation. First, to continue improving access to health, especially access to maternal health, so as to reduce maternal and child mortality. Second, to strengthen effort in ensuring food security, especially for the most vulnerable groups. And third, to enhance poverty alleviation effort, especially through effective rural development program. We wish India a successful review. Thank you.
Indonesia also. Tiene la palabra Irán, por favor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Iran welcomes the distinguished delegation of India to this session of UPR. We commend the commitments of India to the promotion and protection of human rights of its people. Iran also commends India's commitment towards a holistic, equitable, and sustainable development for the country. In a spirit of constructive cooperation, Iran offers India following two recommendations. 1. Continue to strengthen measures to increase